I was just 29 when my husband's will was revealed. His mistress grinned as she claimed the mansion. I was left with nothing but a worthless shack on town's edge. When I objected, my in-laws sneered. Be thankful. A treat, you got something. That night, I drove to the shack. But when I opened the door, my legs buckled. What I found inside changed everything. You know that feeling when your entire world shatters, when you hit rock bottom and think nothing could possibly be worse. I was there, sitting in a fancy law office, watching my dead husband's mistress inherit our mansion, our life, while I was left with nothing but a worthless, rotting shack. But here's the thing, sometimes, the most worthless-looking inheritance holds the most dangerous secrets. And that shack? It was about to reveal why someone had been watching me since I was 17, why my marriage was orchestrated from the beginning, and why Marcus's death was definitely no accident. What the hell had I stumbled into? Just 3 weeks before, my husband Marcus had died in a car accident. My world imploded. Now, surrounded by people who used to call themselves family, I was learning just how deeply I'd been betrayed. Across the gleaming mahogany table sat Melissa, Marcus's mistress. Her black dress was anything but mourning attire, and her smile, meant to be sympathetic, looked more like a cat eyeing a wounded bird. My mother-in-law, Patricia, stiff and elegant, refused to even look at me. Richard, my father-in-law, sat at the head of the table like a king, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the lawyer, Mr. Harrison. I clutched Marcus's wedding band so tight it dug into my palm. The last will and testament of Marcus Jonathan Whitmore, Mr. Harrison began, his voice taking on that formal cadence. Written and notarized 6 months prior to his death. 6 months. My stomach twisted. 6 months ago, we were planning our 5th anniversary trip to Greece, happy, or so I thought. To my beloved Melissa Crawford, I leave the estate at 47 Rosewood Drive, including all furnishings and contents therein. The words hit me like a physical blow. Our home. The place I'd poured my heart into for 2 years. Melissa's lips curved into a triumphant smile. Then came the investment portfolio, the Mercedes-Benz, the BMW X5, the Aspen vacation property, each item another twist of the knife. The Mercedes he'd given me for my birthday, now hers? This is insane. I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant. We were married. California is a community property state. He can't just. Richard cut me off, his voice flat. Everything was in his name, Sophia. Separate property. Just like that, my entire world, everything I thought was mine, gone. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat again, that nervous gesture before more bad news. To my wife, Sophia Marie Whitmore. I leave the property at 1847 Old Mill Road, commonly known as the Fisher Shack. The Fisher Shack? Everyone knew that place. An abandoned, rotting eyesore on the edge of town, the subject of ghost stories. And Marcus had left that to me. That fits her perfectly. Cheap and pathetic, Melissa stage whispered, followed by a ripple of laughter. Even Patricia's mouth twitched. But it was Richard's expression that stung the most, satisfaction, mixed with a chilling relief. As if a problem had been neatly solved. This has to be a mistake. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping the wall. Marcus promised me. We had plans. My voice broke, and I hated myself for showing weakness. Sit down, Sophia. You're making a scene, Richard warned. Making a scene? Your son just left everything to his mistress, and I'm making a scene. The bitter laugh that escaped me was raw. Be grateful, he sneered. At least you got something. Grateful for a worthless shack? Grateful that he'd even remembered me amidst dividing up our life and handing it to the woman he'd been sleeping with, the woman now wearing Marcus's grandmother's pearl necklace, the one he'd said was being cleaned. Mr. Harrison slid a rusty old key across the table. The property transfers to you immediately. All taxes paid for 3 months. 3 months to figure out what to do with a rotting shack while Melissa moved into my home. I'll contest this, I said, my voice shaking, but firm. Melissa's saccharine voice followed me out the door. Have fun in your shack. I hear it's lovely this time of year. I didn't turn around. If I had, I might have done something I'd regret. Tears blurred my vision as I made it to my old Honda Civic, the one Marcus always complained about, and then the sobs came. The sun was setting by the time I could drive again, mocking my grief. I should have gone to my sister Elena's, but something pulled me toward Old Mill Road. Maybe morbid curiosity. Maybe I need to see the full extent of Marcus's humiliation. Or maybe something else entirely. A whisper in the back of my mind that sounded like Marcus's voice. There are places I'll never let you go, Sophia. Not safe for you. I thought he was overprotective then. Now, I wondered if he'd been hiding something. The drive led me into the forgotten edges of town, where streetlights disappeared and the road bled into wilderness. My headlights finally illuminated it. 1847, Old Mill Road. The shack squatted in a clearing like something from a horror movie. Its roof sagged, vines choked one entire side, and broken windows stared out like black, empty eyes. This was insane. It was past 9, I was alone, and this place looked like it might collapse if I breathed on it wrong. But the key burned in my pocket. What was Marcus hiding? The lock groaned open, the door screaming on its hinges as it swung inward, sending bats fluttering from the eaves. My heart hammered. The air hit me immediately. Dust, rot, and something else, metallic and sharp, like old pennies or blood. No, I told myself. Just atmosphere. My flashlight beam danced through the gloom. The floorboards protested with every step. Dust motes danced like tiny ghosts. The main room was larger than I expected, cluttered with sheet-draped furniture and moisture-damaged boxes. But it was the walls that made me stop. They were covered in deliberate carvings, not graffiti, initials, dates, strange symbols. Jam 1987, The Deal Is Done 1993, They No Run 2001. I searched for Marcus's name, for Annie Whitmore, but the writing was too faded. In one corner, a crudely drawn family tree, half the names violently scratched out. I moved to the fireplace, its mouth stuffed with papers. I pulled one free, but it disintegrated. Transfer complete. Liability assumed. In the event of discovery. Knock, knock, knock. A deliberate, measured sound from beneath the floor. 3 taps, a pause, 3 more. My rational mind screamed old house animals, but it sounded so intentional, so human. Hello. My voice was barely a whisper. Is someone there? Silence. Then, the knocking again, this time from a different spot, as if something was moving, tracking me. My hands shook, my flashlight beam wavered. This was stupid. I should leave. But as I turned to go, my light caught something tucked into a broken mirror frame, a photograph, relatively new. It was Marcus, younger, maybe 10 years ago, standing in front of this very shack with 3 other men in expensive suits, champagne glasses raised, celebrating. Phase 1 complete. 2014, a year before I met him. Had it all been planned? Another knock, so forceful that dust rained from the ceiling. I stumbled back, hitting a covered table. The sheet fell away, revealing dozens of photographs scattered across the surface. My light swept over them, and my blood turned to ice. They were all of me. Me at graduation, at job interviews, jogging in the park, shopping, having coffee with friends. Some were dated years before I'd met Marcus. In one, I couldn't have been more than 17, wearing my high school uniform, utterly unaware that someone was watching, documenting, studying me. My legs gave out. I sank onto the dusty couch, Marcus's wedding band falling from my numb fingers, rolling into the shadows. How long? Who are they? Why me? I wasn't special. Just Sophia, middle-class nobody, who thought she'd won the lottery when Marcus Whitmore showed interest. The knocking stopped, replaced by a scratching sound, like nails on wood, moving beneath the floor, circling the room. I pulled my feet onto the couch, terrified something would grab my ankles. My phone buzzed. Elena. Home? Did I even have a home? I started to text her back, but then all the lights on my phone went out. Not just the flashlight. The screen went black, dead, despite being at 60% battery. Absolute darkness. And in that darkness, I heard it clearly, a door opening deeper in the house. Footsteps. Slow, measured. Getting closer. I held my breath, praying it would pass. The footsteps entered the room, paused. I could hear breathing that wasn't my own. Slow and steady. The faint smell of cigarette smoke. Then, my phone blazed back to life, flashlight resuming. The room was empty. But on the dusty floor, fresh footprints led from the doorway to just a few feet from where I sat, then simply stopped. Vanished. On the table where my photos had been, a new item, a leather-bound notebook. On its cover, a single word, Sophia. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Every instinct screamed run. But I had to know. The pages were filled with Marcus's handwriting, dated 3 years before we met. The first entry made my stomach clench. Subject acquired. Surveillance begins tomorrow. R insists she's perfect for the role. No family money, limited connections, ambitious enough to be grateful for attention. If she's as malleable as the background check suggests, phase 2 can begin within 18 months. I was going to be sick. Our entire relationship, our marriage and operation? I flipped through surveillance logs, notes about my habits, weaknesses, strategies for making me fall in love, for keeping me isolated. A door slammed somewhere in the house. Then another. And another. Every door slamming in sequence, growing louder, more violent, closer. I ran. Crashed through the front door, stumbled over the rotten steps, my phone's light swinging wildly as I sprinted for my car. Behind me, the house was silent, but I could feel it watching. As my headlights swept across the shack one last time, I saw a figure in one of the broken windows. Tall, unmoving, a silhouette against the deeper darkness within. I sped away, that leather notebook clutched against my chest. Marcus's voice echoed in my memory, something he'd said a week before his death. If anything happens to me, Soph, stay away from the shack. Promise me. I'd laughed it off. Now I understood his fear. Whatever was in that shack, whatever secrets it held, they were dangerous. But I was going back. Because in that rotting structure was the truth about my marriage, my life, and possibly my future. The notebook proved someone wanted me to find these secrets. The morning sun did nothing to lessen the shack's ominous presence. Elena, my sister, stood beside me, mouth agape. Sophia, this place should be condemned. You can't seriously be going back in there. Tom, her boyfriend and a construction worker, was already circling, shaking his head. One good storm, and the whole thing comes down. But I wasn't listening. My eyes were fixed on the window where I'd seen that figure last night. I knew what I'd seen. Someone had been in there with me. I need to get something, I said, already moving. Important paperwork. Financial documents. It wasn't entirely a lie. Marcus's notebook had mentioned a safe room. Tom grabbed a crowbar and flashlight. We all go, Elena said firmly. Stay behind me. Step where I step. Inside, the house felt less malevolent, more sadly decrepit. The photographs were gone, the table bare. Even the footprints had vanished. What exactly are we looking for? Tom asked. Anything that looks important, I said vaguely, running my hands along the walls. It was Elena who found it. This room is too small, she announced, in what should have been a bedroom. Look at the exterior wall. There's at least 3 feet missing. Tom immediately went to work, prying at the boards until one came loose with a crack. Behind it was a hidden space, narrow but deep, with a ladder leading into darkness. Newer than the rest of this place, Tom muttered, testing its stability. The hidden cellar was a different world. Reinforced concrete, smooth cement. Industrial shelving lined the walls, loaded with bankers' boxes labeled with dates and code names. A workbench held surveillance equipment, old cameras, recording devices, phone-tapping gear. What the hell was your husband into? Elena whispered, picking up a spy device. I didn't answer. My blood had run cold. A box labeled Acquisition, Sophia Marichin, 2008 to 2015. My maiden name. The years before I met Marcus. Inside were detailed reports, photographs, copies of my college transcripts, medical records. A psychological profile that dissected my personality with clinical precision. Subject shows signs of father abandonment issues, likely to respond positively to older male authority figures. Recommend Marcus adopt paternal protective role initially. transitioning to romantic interest once trust established. My hand shook. Every vulnerability catalogued, weaponized. Sophia, Tom's voice was tight. He held an open box. You need to see this. Rolls of cash. Old bills, some from the 80s, all in sequential serial numbers. Hundreds of thousands, maybe more. This is evidence of something, Elena said, snapping photos. Money laundering. Maybe we should call the police. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Not yet. I need to understand what this is first. I moved to another box. Contracts. Legalese I couldn't fully understand, but names kept appearing. Richard Whitmore. And at the bottom of each, J. Fisher. Fisher. Like the Fisher Shack. A photograph slipped out, older, from the 70s. A group of men in front of this very shack. A younger Richard Whitmore, unmistakable. But it was the man next to him that made me gasp. Joseph Fisher, a real estate developer who disappeared in 1987 under mysterious circumstances, his fortune never found. Oh my God, I breathed, pieces clicking together. They killed him. They killed Fisher and took his money, used this place to hide it. Sophia, that's a huge accusation, Elena started. But I was already pulling out more documents. Look at the dates. Fisher disappears in August 1987. These contracts start transferring his properties to shell companies in September 1987. All witnessed by Richard Whitmore and Associates. Another photo, the same men, toasting with champagne, 2 weeks after Fisher vanished. Tom had gone very quiet. These serial numbers. My dad talked about this. Part of a federal investigation in the early 90s, a massive real estate fraud scheme never fully solved. A sound from above made us freeze. Heavy, deliberate footsteps crossing the shack floor. Dust rained down. We hadn't heard a car, hadn't heard the door. Then Richard Whitmore's voice drifted down, conversational and calm. I know you're down there, Sophia. We need to talk. My blood ran cold. How did he know? Don't come up. Elena hissed. Call 911 right now. But Richard continued. The police won't help you, dear. Half of them are on our payroll. Have been since Fisher's time. Come up, or I can come down. This ladder is the only way out. Tom's phone showed no signal. Cell jammer, Richard's voice explained pleasantly. Simple precaution. I looked at Elena and Tom, saw my own fear mirrored in their eyes. But Elena also had determination. She picked up an old camera, hefting it like a weapon. Tom grabbed his crowbar. We go up together, I said quietly. He won't do anything with witnesses. But I was wrong. Richard wasn't alone. 3 suited men, built like enforcers, stood with him. Richard looked perfectly at ease, examining the wall carvings with nostalgia. Marcus was supposed to keep you away from here, he said, without turning. That was the entire point of the marriage. Keep you close but controlled. Make sure you never went digging into your connection to all this. What connection? I demanded. My maiden name is Chin, but your mother's maiden name was Fisher, Richard said, finally turning. His smile was pitying. Joseph Fisher was your great-uncle, though your mother never knew it. He had a falling out with the family, changed his name. But blood is blood. When we discovered you existed, well, we couldn't risk you making a claim on his estate. The room spun. I grabbed the wall. So, you had Marcus marry me to make sure I never found out? Initially, yes, Richard said. But Marcus grew fond of you. Started having second thoughts about the arrangement. He was going to tell you everything. Richard's expression hardened. That's why he had to go. You killed your own son. Elena's voice was horrified. Richard didn't deny it. The syndicate comes first. Always has. Marcus knew that. He forgot it when he fell in love with you. He said love like it was a dirty word. Sentiment has no place in business. This isn't business. It's murder. Tom stepped forward, but one of the suited men blocked him. Prove it, Richard said simply. My son died in a tragic accident. Police investigated. Case closed. I thought of the notebook, the documents in my bag, the evidence in the cellar. If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already. Richard laughed. Kill you? My dear, you're worth more alive. You're the last legitimate Fisher heir. With you under our control, Any future claims on the old properties, any investigations, they all stop with you. Marcus was supposed to get you pregnant, ensure the bloodline continued under our supervision. But he got sentimental, started talking about running away with you. I'll never help you, I declared. You already are, Richard replied. Just by accepting the shack, you've legally acknowledged the will. By entering this property, you've established possession. And now that you've found our little storage facility, well, you're complicit. Those documents, your fingerprints are all over them. That money, you've handled it. If this ever comes to light, you'll go down with us. It was a trap. The whole thing. You're insane if you think I'll keep quiet, I yelled. But Richard was already moving toward the door. You'll keep quiet because you have no choice. Go to the police with your wild theories. See how far you get. Detective Morrison plays poker with me every Thursday. Judge Hamilton's daughter got into Harvard thanks to us. The district attorney owns 3 properties that used to belong to your great-uncle. He paused at the doorway. Clean up this mess, Sophia. Get rid of those documents. Forget what you think you know. We'll leave you alone. Keep the shack. Burn it down for all I care. But if you try to use what you found here against us, remember, you're not just fighting me. You're fighting 40 years of established power. They left us in stunned silence. We're going to the FBI, Elena said. This is beyond local corruption. But I was staring at a still smoldering cigarette, but on the dusty table, the same brand I'd smelled last night. They'd been here then, too, watching me discover their secrets, letting me find just enough to implicate myself. He's right about one thing, I said slowly. My fingerprints are all over that evidence. If they spin it right, I could look like I was involved. The neglected wife who knew about her husband's criminal connections and tried to profit from his death. Tom protested, but he was already seeing how a good lawyer could twist the narrative. We need to be smarter, I said. We can't just run to law enforcement without knowing who we can trust. First, we document everything. Every piece of paper, every serial number, every photograph. We build a case so airtight even corrupted officials can't ignore it. Elena was already taking photos, but she looked troubled. Sophia, what if they come back? What if they decide you're too much of a liability? I thought about Marcus, about his car going off the road on a clear night. No skid marks. He'd called me an hour before, agitated, saying he needed to tell me something important. Then we make sure I'm not an easy target, I said. We make copies, store them in different places. We create a dead man switch. If something happens to me, everything goes public. Tom, who had been examining the cellar entrance, suddenly straightened. There's another level. He pointed to the ladder, which continued past the first cellar floor. A hatch, painted to blend in. My heart raced as we opened it, revealing a second, smaller, older chamber. It contained a single item, a metal filing cabinet. Inside were the real secrets. Not just financial documents, but photographs of crime scenes, what looked like murder confessions, and a leather-bound ledger detailing every crime the syndicate had committed since 1987. Names, dates, methods, and most importantly, who had ordered each action. Marcus's death was in there, listed as Termination Order Number 47. Subject, Marcus Whitmore. Reason, security breach / potential whistleblower. Authorized by R. Whitmore. Method, vehicular incident. Status, complete. Richard had signed his own son's death warrant. But it was the next entry that made my blood run cold. Termination Order Number 48. Subject, Sophia Whitmore. Reason, inherited liability. Authorized by R. Whitmore. Method, TBD. Status, pending review. We need to leave. Elena's voice was high with panic. Right now. We grabbed everything we could carry, the ledger, key documents, photographs. As we climbed back up, I noticed something I'd missed before. Fresh scratches around the door frame. Cameras, Tom whispered, his face pale. They're watching us right now. We ran for Tom's truck, throwing everything inside. As we peeled out, I saw them in the rearview mirror. 2 black SUVs emerging from the tree line. Where do we go? Elena asked, clutching the ledger. The newspaper, I thought fast. The Coastal Tribune. Jenny. Martinez. She's been trying to expose corruption for years. If we can get to her, get this published before they stop us. Tom took a hard right. They're gaining on us. We burst onto Main Street, Saturday shoppers jumping back as we careened past. The Tribune building was just ahead. I screeched to a stop and was running before Tom had even parked. The ledger clutched against my chest. I burst through the doors, past the startled receptionist, up the stairs to the newsroom. Jenny was at her desk, her eyes widening. Sophia, what? Richard Whitmore killed his son. I gasped, shoving the ledger at her. And Joseph Fisher. It's all in here. The whole syndicate, 40 years of crimes. They're coming for me right now. Jenny, to her credit, didn't hesitate. She grabbed the ledger, her scanner already warming up. Get everything digital now. Elena and Tom burst in behind me, arms full of documents. Other reporters were standing now, sensing a story. Jenny started barking orders, and suddenly the entire newsroom was in motion. They can't stop all of us, Jenny said, her fingers flying. Not once it's out there. Through the window, I saw the black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Richard stepped out, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked up at the newsroom window, and our eyes met. His expression was unreadable, but I saw him say something to his men. They stayed by the cars. My phone rang. An unknown number. Don't answer. Elena started. But I already had. You've made a serious mistake. Richard's voice was calm. Too calm. You have no idea what you're destroying. You destroyed it yourself when you killed Marcus, I said, putting him on speaker so Jenny could record. When you killed Joseph Fisher. Fisher was a pedophile, Richard said bluntly. Did you see that in your precious documents? He had a thing for teenage boys. 3 families came to us begging for justice the law wouldn't provide. Yes, we killed him, and we took his money and used it to build something better. Schools, hospitals, homeless shelters, all funded with Fisher's blood money. I faltered. This wasn't in the documents. But Jenny was shaking her head, mouthing lie. Even if that were true, it doesn't justify 40 years of murder and corruption, I said. Doesn't it? We cleaned up this town, Sophia. When we took over, it was dying. Drugs, violence, poverty. Now look at it. Thriving, safe, all because we were willing to do what needed to be done. You killed your own son. A pause, then quieter. Marcus made his choice. He chose you over his family, over his obligations. I gave him every chance to come back, to remember who he was. He refused. So you had him murdered? I had a problem solved. Just like I'll solve this one. The line went dead. Through the window, I watched the SUVs pull away. They were leaving? Why? Jenny's computer pinged. Then another reporter's. Then another. What's happening? I asked. Jenny's face had gone white. Every file we just uploaded, they're being deleted. From our servers, from the cloud, from everywhere. Tom was at his laptop. It's not just here. Every copy I emailed myself to my contacts, they're all gone. It's like they never existed. I looked down at the physical ledger in my hands. It was all we had left. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. You have 1 hour to return what you've stolen. After that, termination order number 48 goes into effect. Your friends, too. Their families. Everyone you've involved in this. 1 hour. Elena grabbed my hand. We run right now. We take the ledger and we run. But I was thinking about Marcus, about the fear in his eyes that last night. He'd known this was coming. He tried to protect me the only way he knew how, by leaving me the shack, knowing I'd find the truth, knowing I'd have leverage. No, I said quietly. We don't run. We fight. But we fight smart. I turned to Jenny. How fast can you get a camera crew here? She blinked. 20 minutes. Do it. Live broadcast. We go public with everything right now, before they can stop us. I held up the ledger. They can delete digital files, but they can't delete a live broadcast that thousands of people are watching. Jenny was already making calls. Other reporters set up cameras, transforming the newsroom into an impromptu studio. The black SUVs had returned, surrounding the building. Sophia, Tom said quietly. What if they don't care about witnesses? What if they're past that point? Richard's voice on the phone echoed in my mind. The resignation in it when he talked about Marcus. They were past the point of caring about collateral damage. This was endgame. Then we make sure the truth outlives us, I said, opening the ledger to Marcus's termination order. We make sure his death meant something. The camera's red light blinked on. Good evening, Jenny began, her voice steady despite everything. We're interrupting our regular programming with explosive revelations about a criminal syndicate that has controlled our city for 40 years. Through the window, I saw Richard on his phone again, his face twisted with rage. But he wasn't looking at the building anymore. He was looking up the street where police cars were arriving. Not local police. State police. FBI. Someone else had been watching. Someone else had been waiting for this moment. As Jenny continued her broadcast, as the ledger's secrets spilled out into the light, I felt something shift. The shack had one more secret, one more card to play. Because there had been another watcher all along, someone in the shadows documenting everything, just like the syndicate had documented me. The cigarette butts, the mysteriously appearing notebook, the convenient discovery of the cellar. Someone had been guiding me to this moment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Well played, Mrs. Whitmore. Your husband would be proud. The rest of the evidence is en route to federal authorities. Signed, JF. JF. Joseph Fisher. But Joseph Fisher had been dead for 40 years, hadn't he? The federal agents had cordoned off the Tribune building, but they couldn't stop what had already begun. Jenny's broadcast had gone viral within minutes. Now, 3 days later, I sat in the town library's basement archives, surrounded by old newspapers and microfiche that the syndicate hadn't thought to destroy. Elena sat across from me, researching the real estate syndicate and every name in that ledger. The FBI had the original, but I'd memorized enough to know what to look for. Found something, Elena said, turning her screen towards me. Joseph Fisher had a son. Death certificate filed in 1986, 1 year before Joseph supposedly died. But look at this. She pulled up another document. School enrollment records show A.J. Fisher Jr. attending private school in Switzerland from 1986 to 1990. My pulse quickened. He faked his son's death to protect him. Or someone else did. Elena's fingers flew. The death certificate was signed by Dr. Marcus Whitmore Sr., Richard's older brother. He died in a boating accident 2 months after signing it. Another accident. Another convenient death. The pattern was so clear now. The library's fluorescent lights flickered, and I glanced at the exits. Even with federal protection, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The syndicate had operated for 40 years. They wouldn't go down without a fight. My phone buzzed. Another text from JF. Municipal Records, Box 1847. Third folder. Time you knew the whole truth. 1847, the shack's address. I found the box quickly, my hands trembling as I opened the third folder. Inside were property deeds. But not just any properties. These were for buildings all over town, all purchased between 1970 and 1987. All in my mother's maiden name, Fisher. Oh my God, I breathed. My mother owned half the town and never knew it. The deeds were tucked behind falsified documents showing the properties transferred to shell companies, but the originals were here, hidden in plain sight in public records no one had bothered to check, because everyone assumed Joseph Fisher had no heirs. Elena was reading over my shoulder. Sophia, if these are legitimate, you don't just own that shack. You own them all. The business district, 3 hotels, billions in real estate. Which explains why they needed me under control, I said. The pieces are finally clicking into place. It wasn't just about keeping me quiet. They needed me alive, but ignorant, in case anyone ever challenged their ownership. They could always produce me as the heir who had willingly transferred the properties. A shadow fell across the table. I looked up to find an elderly man standing there, straight-backed, with eyes that seemed familiar. He wore an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster beneath. Mrs. Whitmore, he said quietly. We need to talk. Elena started to stand, reaching for her phone. But the man held up a hand. I'm not with them. I've been fighting them for 40 years. My name is James Fisher. Joseph's supposedly dead son. I stared at him, seeing it now. The same jawline as in Joseph's old photos. The same intense gaze. You sent the texts, I said. He nodded, pulling out a chair. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. When Marcus married you, I thought it was over. They'd won. But then Marcus started having doubts. He reached out to me, wanted to know the truth about his family's empire. You were in contact with Marcus for the last 6 months of his life? I asked. He was gathering evidence, planning to bring them all down. The ledger you found, Marcus compiled most of it. He was going to give it to you on your anniversary. Tell you everything. James's face darkened. Richard found out 3 days before. You know the rest. I thought about Marcus's strange behavior in those final weeks. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls. The way he'd held me like he was saying goodbye. He'd known. Why didn't you help him? Elena demanded. Why let him die? I tried. I warned him to run, to take you and disappear. But Marcus believed he could outsmart his father. He thought Richard would never actually. James stopped, swallowing hard. He underestimated how far Richard would go to protect the syndicate. And now? I asked. James pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. 40 years of evidence. Everything my father gathered before they killed him. Everything I've collected since, and everything Marcus added. Bank records, murder confessions, recorded conversations. The FBI has copies, but I wanted you to have the originals. Why? Because this is your fight now. Your inheritance. Not just the properties, but the responsibility to see justice done. He stood, wincing slightly. They'll come for me now that I've shown myself. But it doesn't matter anymore. The truth is out. Wait, I said as he turned to leave. Your father. The things Richard said about him. Lies, James said flatly. My father was investigating child trafficking in the foster system. He got too close to the truth, found out some powerful people were involved. So, they killed him and destroyed his reputation to make sure no one would listen if any evidence surfaced. He walked away before I could ask more questions, disappearing into the stacks. When I tried to follow, he was gone. No sign he'd ever been there except for the envelope in my hands. Inside were photographs I'd never seen, Marcus and James together, planning, preparing. Recordings on USB drives, financial records that showed the money trail leading all the way to judges, senators, even a governor. The syndicate wasn't just a local operation. It was a cancer that had metastasized throughout the state. We need to get this to the FBI immediately, Elena said. But I was looking at something else. A note in Marcus's handwriting, dated the day before he died. Sophia, if you're reading this, then I failed to protect you, and I'm sorry. The shack isn't your prison. It's your weapon. Everything they've built sits on stolen land, your land. The original deeds are hidden in the library, box 1847. The development contracts are all fraudulent. One lawsuit, and their entire empire crumbles. But be careful. They'll kill to protect it. Trust Jenny Martinez. Trust Agent Sarah Coleman at the FBI. And trust yourself. You're stronger than you know. All my love. Tears blurred my vision. He tried to save me, even knowing it would cost him everything. My phone rang. Jenny Martinez. Sophia, you need to see the news now. We ran upstairs to the library's main floor where a crowd had gathered around the television. The breaking news banner read, Richard Whitmore arrested in federal corruption probe. There he was, being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. But it was the next arrest that shocked me. Patricia Whitmore, Marcus's mother, also in cuffs. Her perfect composure finally cracked. The FBI raided their homes an hour ago, Jenny said, appearing beside me. Found enough evidence to put them away for life. But Sophia, there's something else. She handed me her phone. The screen showed a news article from that morning. Local businessman found dead in apparent suicide. The businessman was James Fisher. The man I'd just spoken to an hour ago had been dead since dawn. That's impossible, I said, my voice shaking. He was just here. He gave me this. I held up the envelope. Jenny's expression was grim. Security footage shows you and Elena alone at that table for the past 2 hours. No one else came near you. The envelope was real. I could feel its weight, see the documents inside. But James Fisher was dead. Had been dead for hours before our conversation. Elena grabbed my arm. Sophia, we need to leave now. Because standing in the library entrance were 3 men I recognized from the syndicate files, enforcers who hadn't been arrested, now walking toward us with purpose. We didn't run. We couldn't. Not with dozens of witnesses around. Instead, I walked straight toward them, my phone already recording. Mrs. Whitmore, the lead man said smoothly. He was younger than the others, handsome in a corporate way. I'm Daniel Morrison. I represent certain interests that would like to make you an offer. Morrison? As in Detective Morrison, who played poker with Richard. Your father's on Richard's payroll. His smile didn't waver. My father is currently in federal custody. Actually, turns out he kept meticulous records of every bribe he took. Very embarrassing for the family. He gestured toward the library's conference room. Shall we talk privately? Anything you have to say can be said right here, I replied, aware that Jenny was also recording, that other library patrons had their phones out. Very well. Daniel pulled out a tablet. We're prepared to acknowledge your inheritance claim to the Fisher properties. Full market value, approximately $2.8 billion. All you have to do is sign a non-disclosure agreement about past irregularities. Irregularities? You mean murders? I mean, business practices that, while perhaps aggressive, were standard for the time. His tone remained pleasant, but his eyes were cold. Take the deal, Mrs. Whitmore. You'll be wealthy beyond imagination. I already am, I said, holding up the original deeds. These predate your fraudulent contracts. I don't need your acknowledgement. I own those properties outright. For the first time, Daniel's composure cracked. Those documents won't hold up in court. Too many questions about their authenticity, their chain of custody. Then I guess we'll let a judge decide. I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me cold. Melissa Crawford would like to speak with you. About Marcus. About what really happened that night. Melissa, the mistress who'd inherited everything. I'd been so focused on Richard that I'd almost forgotten her. She's waiting in the conference room, Daniel continued. She has information you need to hear. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but the mention of Marcus made the decision for me. Elena and Jenny followed as I walked into the conference room. Melissa sat at the polished table, looking nothing like the confident woman from the wall reading. Her clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, her hands shaking. He wasn't supposed to die, she said without preamble, her voice hoarse. Richard promised me no one would get hurt. I sat down across from her, my rage warring with a desperate need for answers. Start from the beginning. Melissa laughed bitterly. The beginning? I was hired 5 years ago. My job was to seduce Marcus, make him fall in love with me, give Richard leverage over his son. It was just another assignment. I'd done it before. You're a professional honeypot? Jenny asked, her recorder visible. Was, Melissa corrected. Melissa met my eyes, and I saw something unexpected there. Guilt. Marcus never fell for it. He knew what I was from day one. He played along to keep his father happy, but he never touched me. Never even kissed me. Everything Richard thought was happening between us was fake. The room spun. But the will, the inheritance? Window dressing. Marcus changed his will to make it look like our affair was real, to keep Richard from getting suspicious while he gathered evidence. He was supposed to change it back before, she trailed off, fresh tears cutting through her makeup. Before what? Before we ran. All 3 of us. You, me, and Marcus. He'd arranged new identities. Had money hidden offshore. We were going to disappear. Let the FBI handle Richard while we started over somewhere safe. Melissa pulled out her phone, scrolling to a message thread. Look, these are our real conversations. I read Marcus's messages, my heart breaking with each word. Just a few more days, Mel. Get Sophia somewhere safe on the 15th. I'll handle my father. Then we all disappear. Thank you for protecting her. I know this hasn't been easy for you. Protecting me? I looked up at Melissa. Who do you think kept the other enforcers away from you? Who made sure your food wasn't poisoned? Your car wasn't tampered with. Melissa's voice was fierce now. I've been your bodyguard for 2 years, Sophia. Marcus hired me to infiltrate his father's organization and protect you from the inside. Elena leaned forward. So, you're saying you're actually what? An undercover agent. Former FBI, actually. I left the bureau after my partner was killed by someone on Richard's payroll. I've been working independently ever since, taking down corrupt organizations from within. She looked at me again. Marcus found me through James Fisher. They offered me a chance at revenge against Richard, and I took it. But if you were protecting us, why didn't you stop them from killing Marcus? Melissa's composure finally shattered completely. Because I didn't know. Richard kept me out of the loop that night. Sent me to Aspen on a fake errand. By the time I realized what was happening, Marcus was already. She choked on a sob. I failed. I failed him, and I failed you. Daniel Morrison had been standing by the door and now stepped forward. Touching story. Completely unprovable, of course. And it doesn't change the fundamental situation. The syndicate is bigger than Richard Whitmore. Cut off the head, and it grows back. Is that a threat? Jenny asked, her camera turning toward him. It's a reality. Do you think a few arrests will stop this? We have resources you can't imagine. Connections at every level. Take the money, sign the NDA, and live your life. Or keep fighting and end up like Marcus. The room went cold at his words. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to get down. Daniel reached for something in his jacket and was immediately tackled. Agent Sarah Coleman, the one Marcus had told me to trust, helped me to my feet. Are you hurt? No, how did you, your guardian angel, she said with a slight smile. Mr. Fisher's son has been quite helpful. But James Fisher is dead, I exclaimed. The news said James Fisher is in protective custody. The body this morning was a syndicate plant trying to flush him out. She turned to Melissa. Miss Crawford, we'll need your full cooperation. Melissa nodded, looking relieved. You'll have it. Everything. 20 years of operations, names, dates, methods. I want them all to burn. As the agents led Daniel and his men away, I found myself standing with Elena, Jenny, and Melissa. An unlikely alliance brought together by Marcus's death. What now? Elena asked. I looked at the documents spread on the table. Deeds, evidence, 40 years of secrets. Then I thought about Marcus's note, about the shack being a weapon, not a prison. Now we tear it all down, I said. Every corrupt official, every dirty deal, every crime they thought they'd buried. We use the properties to fund the investigation, turn their own resources against them. Jenny was already typing on her phone. I'll need exclusive access to everything. This story will take years to tell properly. You'll have it. I turned to Melissa. What will you do? She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. What I do best? Hunt down the ones who got away. The syndicate has tentacles everywhere. Someone needs to cut them off. Agent Coleman handed me a card. We'll need you in protective custody until this is over. No, I said firmly. I'm going back to the shack. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Sophia, that's insane. Elena protested. They know you're there. They could come for me anywhere. But the shack is mine now. Really mine. And I'm done running from shadows. That night, I stood in front of the Fisher shack, my shack, with a different perspective. It wasn't a rotting monument to my humiliation anymore. It was ground zero of an empire built on blood. And it would be ground zero for its destruction. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. But this time it wasn't signed JF. It was signed MW. Proud of you, sophomore, finish what I started. Look under the floorboard beneath the window where you saw the shadow. One more surprise. M. My hand shook. It couldn't be, could it? I ran into the shack, not caring about the darkness or the creaking floors. I found the spot, pried up the floorboard with my bare hands. Underneath was a metal box and inside, a phone. It turned on immediately, showing a single video file. Marcus's face filled the screen, dated the day he died. Sophia, if you're watching this, then my plan worked, even if I didn't survive it. The man who gave you this phone, he looks like me, doesn't he? Close enough to fool anyone who isn't looking too carefully. Close enough to die in my place while I disappear. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor, staring at the impossible. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was the only way. Richard would never stop hunting us unless he believed I was dead. The man who died, a terminal patient who volunteered, who wanted his family provided for. They have been generously. Tears streamed down my face as Marcus continued. I can't come back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm alive, and I'm watching, and I'm helping where I can. James Fisher is my contact. When you're ready, he'll know how to find me. Until then, trust Melissa, trust Coleman, and trust yourself. You're the strongest person I know, and you're about to prove it to the world. The video ended with Marcus saying the words I needed to hear. I love you, Sophia. This isn't goodbye. It's just see you later. The phone went dead in my hands, its message delivered. Outside, I heard car engines approaching. Not the threatening rumble of SUVs, but the steady sound of federal vehicles, bringing more agents to protect the shack and continue the investigation. I stood up, slipping the phone into my pocket. Marcus was alive somewhere, watching and waiting. The syndicate was crumbling, its 40-year reign of terror ending, and I was standing in the center of it all. No longer the naive girl in those surveillance photos, but a woman who'd found her power in the most unlikely place. The shack had been meant to break me. Instead, it had revealed who I really was. Not just Sophia Whitmore, the deceived widow, but Sophia Fisher Whitmore, heir to an empire and architect of its redemption. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Legal battles, testimonies, rebuilding what had been corrupted. But tonight, I stood in my shack, my inheritance, my weapon, my strength. And for the first time since this all began, I smiled. They'd given me a shack. I was going to give them justice. The first attempt on my life came 3 weeks after the arrests. I was in the courthouse, filing paperwork to reclaim the Fisher properties, when the clerk's eyes went wide. I turned just as a man in a maintenance uniform pulled a knife, lunging forward. Melissa appeared from nowhere, slamming into him. They went down in a tangle of limbs, the knife skittering across the marble floor. Security swarmed, but Melissa had already subdued him. Third one this week, she said calmly, brushing off her jacket. They're getting desperate. She was right. With Richard and Patricia in federal custody, the syndicate's leadership had fractured. Some were fleeing the country, others turning state's evidence. But a hardcore faction had decided that killing me would somehow solve their problems. Agent Coleman had assigned a full protection detail, but I insisted on continuing the work. Every day, I sat in that courthouse, systematically dismantling the empire. And every day, the threats escalated. You should reconsider the safe house, Coleman said that evening, reviewing the security footage of the attack. We can handle the legal proceedings without you physically present. No, I said, for what felt like the 100th time. They want me to hide, to be afraid. I won't give them that satisfaction. But bravado was easier in daylight. That night, alone in the shack, despite the agents outside, I jumped at every creak, every shadow. The phone Marcus had left sat on the table like a lifeline to a ghost. I'd watched his message countless times, but it didn't make his absence easier. A knock at the door made my heart race. Mrs. Whitmore, it's Tom. Elena sent me to check on you. I recognized Tom's voice and opened the door. But the man standing there wasn't Elena's boyfriend. It was someone wearing Tom's face, literally, like a sophisticated mask. Before I could scream, a hand covered my mouth and everything went black. I woke in a concrete room with no windows. My wrists zip-tied high to a metal chair. Fluorescent lights. The air smelled of motor oil and rust. A warehouse, probably one of the syndicates. Finally awake. The voice came from the shadows, and then Patricia Whitmore stepped into view. Marcus's mother, who was supposed to be in federal custody. How? Money, dear. Enough money can buy anything, even a body double to serve your sentence. She pulled up a chair, sitting across from me with the same perfect posture she'd maintained at the will reading. You've caused quite a mess, Sophia. 40 years of careful planning. Destroyed by a nobody who should have been grateful for what she was given. You mean destroyed by the truth coming out? I challenged. She slapped me, the crack echoing. Truth? The truth is this town was dying before we took control. Unemployment, crime, poverty. We saved it by making hard choices. Joseph Fisher was destroying the local economy. Yes, we stopped him permanently. And Marcus? You were killing your own son. A hard choice. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. Marcus was weak. He fell in love with you. Actually fell in love, despite knowing what you were. Richard gave him every opportunity to come back to us, but he chose you. The venom in that last word could have melted steel. So, you had him murdered. I had him removed from the equation. Just like I'm about to remove you. She stood, smoothing her skirt. But first, you're going to sign some documents. Transfer the Fisher properties back to our control. Publicly recant your accusations. Admit you fabricated evidence in grief-driven madness. Never. Patricia smiled, a cold expression that never touched her eyes. I thought you might say that. She pulled out her phone, showing me a live video feed. Elena and Tom, the real Tom, tied up in another room. Sign or they die. Simple as that. My blood turned to ice. They have nothing to do with this. They helped you. That's enough. She placed the documents in front of me, unlocking one of my hands. Sign. I picked up the pen, trembling, looking at the legal documents that would undo everything. Elena and Tom versus justice for 40 years of victims. How could I choose? 5 seconds, Patricia said, her finger hovering over her phone screen. I started to sign, but something in the video feed caught my eye. A shadow moving behind Elena and Tom, barely visible. Then another and another. I pressed the pen to paper, writing slowly, buying time. Patricia leaned closer, eager to see her victory. That's when the lights cut out. In the darkness, I heard Patricia's startled gasp, then a struggle. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a red glow. Patricia was on the ground, unconscious. Melissa stood over her with a tactical baton. Took you long enough, I said, relief overwhelming. Had to wait for the full team to get in position. She cut my restraints and handed me a gun. Can you shoot? Marcus taught me. Good. Because we're not out yet. The warehouse was a maze of corridors. We could hear shouting, footsteps converging. Melissa led the way, her movements professional and lethal. We found Elena and Tom in a side room, guarded by 2 men who didn't expect us to come in shooting. Melissa took them down with non-lethal shots while I worked on freeing my friends. Sophia. Elena hugged me tightly. We thought you were dead. Not yet, I said. But the sound of approaching vehicles made us all freeze. Through a dirty window, I saw black SUVs surrounding the building, but also FBI vehicles, police cars, even news vans. The cavalry had arrived. But so had what remained of the syndicate's forces. This is about to get messy, Melissa said, checking her weapon. Stay low. Move fast. And then the wall exploded inward, concrete and rebar flying. Through the hole came men in tactical gear, but no badges. Private military contractors. The firefight was chaos. Melissa engaged them immediately, but we were outnumbered. Tom pulled Elena behind an overturned table while I tried to remember everything Marcus had taught me. Then I heard it. Patricia's voice over an intercom. Burn it all. If we can't have it, no one can. The smell hit us first. Smoke, gasoline. They were going to burn the warehouse with us inside. Move. Melissa shouted, pointing toward an exit. But as we ran, flames raced along the walls. The exit was blocked by debris. Tom threw his shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. The smoke was getting thicker. The heat unbearable. Sirens outside, so close, but so far. That's when I saw him. A figure in the smoke, moving against the chaos. For a moment, I thought it was another mercenary, but then he turned toward us and, even through the haze, I knew that profile. Marcus. He gestured urgently toward a section of wall that looked solid, but gave way when he pushed, revealing a hidden passage. This way. No. Elena gasped. Tom stood frozen, but there was no time for reunions or explanations. We ran into the passage, Marcus leading us through old smuggling tunnels. Behind us, the roar of flames grew louder. We emerged into daylight 100 yards from the warehouse, gasping and covered in soot. FBI agents immediately surrounded us, Coleman at their head. Marcus Whitmore, she said, her gun drawn but not quite aimed. You're supposed to be dead. Can we discuss that after you arrest my mother? Marcus replied, pointing at the warehouse where Patricia was being dragged out by agents, her perfect composure finally shattered. The reunion I'd imagined dozens of times was nothing like the reality. We were in an FBI field office. Marcus in handcuffs despite having saved us. I was still processing that he was alive, breathing real. I know you're angry, he said quietly. Angry? I laughed, but it came out broken. You let me think you were dead. You let me grieve. It was the only way to keep you safe. As long as my father thought I was dead, he focused on containing the damage instead of hunting us. If he'd known I was alive, you could have told me. Found a way to let me know. How? Every communication was monitored. Every person who knew increased the risk. Even Melissa didn't know until today. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Sophia, I died for you. Literally died. Legally, officially, completely. Everything I was, everything I had, gone, because keeping you safe was more important than anything else. Don't. I stood up, needing distance. Don't make this noble. You lied to me. Our entire relationship was built on lies. No. His voice was firm. The assignment was a lie. The beginning was a lie. But falling in love with you, that was the truest thing that ever happened to me. It's why I couldn't go through with it. Why I started gathering evidence against my family. Why I'm sitting here now. Coleman entered. Mr. Whitmore, you're looking at serious charges. Fraud, conspiracy, fleeing a crime scene. I have immunity, Marcus said calmly. Full immunity granted by the Justice Department in exchange for my cooperation. Check with the Attorney General's office. I've been working with them for the past month, feeding them information about the syndicate's remaining operations. Coleman looked skeptical, but made the call. Her expression changed as she listened, finally hanging up with a frustrated sigh. You're free to go. Both of you. Outside the federal building, Marcus and I stood awkwardly. Two strangers who had once promised each other forever. The shack, he said suddenly. We need to go there now. Why? Because in about an hour, the remaining syndicate members are going to make one last play, and the shack is the key to stopping them. The convoy heading to the shack looked like a presidential motorcade. FBI vehicles, state police, even a helicopter. Marcus sat beside me in Coleman's SUV, explaining. The shack isn't just where they hid evidence. It's built on the cornerstone of their entire financial structure. There's a vault underneath, deeper than the cellar you found. It contains the original incorporation documents for every shell company, every fraudulent trust, every illegal transfer. Destroy those documents and, legally, billions in assets revert to their rightful owners, including you. So Patricia was trying to get me to sign new documents, but she needed the originals destroyed too? Which is why they're coming for the shack. He pointed ahead where smoke was already visible on the horizon. They're going to try to burn it down. Vault and all. But when we arrived, the shack wasn't on fire. Instead, it was surrounded by armed syndicate members in a standoff with law enforcement. At their center stood Daniel Morrison, the smooth-talking lawyer, now holding an assault rifle. The happy couple, reunited, he called out through a megaphone. How touching. Here's the situation. We have explosives planted throughout the structure and the surrounding area. You come any closer, we detonate. The evidence goes up in smoke, and probably half of you with it. Coleman grabbed her radio, but Marcus put a hand on her arm. Let me talk to him. That's insane. I know these people. I know what they want. He looked at me. Trust me. Despite everything, I found myself nodding. Marcus walked toward the shack, hands raised. Snipers adjusted their positions. Everyone held their breath. Daniel, Marcus called out. You know this is over. Even if you destroy the documents, we have copies. Testimony enough to bury everyone involved. Copies can be challenged. Testimony can be recanted. But those originals, those are ironclad. Daniel's voice was desperate now. 40 years, Marcus. 40 years of building something magnificent. And you destroyed it for what? Love. For justice. For truth. For the chance to look at myself in the mirror without seeing my father's crimes. Marcus took another step. And yes, for love. Because that's the one thing you and father never understood. There are things more valuable than power. That's when I saw it. Movement in the shack's broken window. Not a syndicate member. That familiar silhouette I'd seen on my first night. James Fisher stepped out of the shadows, but not the elderly man from the library. This was Joseph Fisher himself, impossible as that was, looking exactly as he had in those 1970s photographs. "Hello, Daniel," Joseph said, his voice carrying despite the distance. "Been a while." Daniel's composure cracked completely. No, you're dead. We killed you. I saw the body. You saw a body. But you can't kill an idea, Daniel. You can't murder justice. It just waits. Patient. Until the right moment. Joseph walked closer, and in the afternoon sun, I could see through him, literally see through him to the shack behind. Mass hallucination? I didn't know and didn't care. Because Daniel and his men were backing away in terror, their weapons lowering. In that moment of distraction, FBI agents moved in, disarming them before they could recover. But one person wasn't distracted. Patricia. She emerged from behind the shack, a pistol in her hand, aimed directly at me. "If I can't have my empire," she snarled, "at least I can take Joseph's heir." 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Patricia's, missing me by inches. Melissa's, catching Patricia in the shoulder. And Marcus's, I hadn't even known he was armed, hitting his mother's gun hand, sending the weapon flying. Patricia fell to the ground, screaming in rage and pain. "You shot me. Your own mother." "You stopped being my mother the day you agreed to kill me," Marcus replied coldly. As the EMTs took Patricia away and the FBI processed the scene, I stood in front of my shack, battered, bullet scarred, but still standing. Joseph Fisher, or whatever he was, had vanished the moment the danger passed, leaving only questions. Marcus stood beside me, maintaining careful distance. "The vault's real. We should check it before what?" "Before you disappear again," I asked. I was thinking more like, before dinner. He pulled out his phone, showing me a reservation confirmation. Our anniversary restaurant, the table where he proposed. "I know I have no right to ask, but you faked your death." "Yes." "You let me mourn you." "Yes." "You manipulated me, even if it was to protect me." "Yes." I turned to face him fully. "And you gave up everything. Your family, your name, your entire life, to keep me safe." I'd do it again. The emergency vehicles were leaving. The drama finally ending. Elena and Tom waited by their car, giving us space. Melissa was coordinating with Coleman, probably planning to hunt down the last syndicate stragglers. Jenny Martinez was already on camera, reporting live. "One dinner," I said. "Finally, you get one dinner to explain everything. Really everything. No more lies. No more secrets. Deal. Deal." We entered the shack together, using construction lights to navigate to the real vault Marcus had described. It was there, hidden beneath the hidden cellar, a massive steel door. Inside were the documents he'd promised, but also something else, Joseph Fisher's real journal. The truth was simpler and sadder than all the theories. Joseph had discovered the syndicate's early crimes, tried to stop them, and paid with his life, but he'd hidden the evidence, booby-trapped it in a way that would only activate if someone with Fisher blood tried to access it. That's why they needed me. Not just as a potential heir, but as the key to their own destruction. "He planned it all," I said, reading Joseph's final entry. "My mother's accidental meeting with my father, ensuring the bloodline continued, but stayed hidden. Even me finding him. He'd left instructions knowing that eventually, the syndicate would need a Fisher, a 4-year plan to bring justice. He was playing chess while everyone else played checkers," Marcus said. That evening at the restaurant, Marcus filled in the gaps. How he discovered his family's crimes. How he tried to find a way out that wouldn't get us both killed. How James Fisher, Joseph's very real, very alive son, had helped him fake his death and continue the fight from the shadows. "So what now?" I asked over dessert. "You're legally dead. Your family's empire is crumbling. Where does Marcus Whitmore go from here?" "Marcus Whitmore stays dead," he said simply. "But Marcus Fisher, Joseph's legally adopted son, thanks to documents backdated and filed in Switzerland, he has possibilities." "That's fraud. That's justice." Poetic justice, maybe, but still justice. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. I know I can't ask you to forgive me. I know trust once broken might never heal, but I'm asking for the chance to try. I thought about the shack, about the secrets it had held, the truths it had revealed. How something meant to be worthless had become invaluable, how something meant to imprison me had set me free. We tear it down, I said suddenly. What? The shack. We tear it down and build something new. A community center, maybe. Something that gives back what your family stole. I finally took his hand. And we do it together. Not as husband and wife. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But as partners. Equal partners. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Partners. 6 months later, I stood where the shack had been, watching construction crews break ground on the Fisher Community Center. The FBI investigation had resulted in over 200 arrests, the complete dismantling of the syndicate, and the recovery of nearly $1 billion in stolen assets. Patricia was serving life in federal prison. The real Patricia this time. Richard had died in custody, a heart attack brought on by seeing his empire crumble. Daniel Morrison had turned state's evidence. Melissa had disappeared, chasing the last remnants of corruption, but she sent postcards occasionally. Elena and Tom were engaged. Jenny had won a Pulitzer. And Marcus? Marcus was standing beside me, our relationship slowly rebuilding on a foundation of truth. Any regrets? He asked, watching the construction. I thought about Joseph Fisher's ghost, about the shack that had seemed like a curse, but became a gift. About the journey from humiliation to triumph. No, I said, meaning it. No regrets. The shack was gone, but what it represented remained. The idea that truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually surface. That justice, no matter how long delayed, would eventually arrive. And that sometimes the things meant to break us become the very things that reveal our strength. As the sun set, I felt Marcus's hand find mine. Not desperate or grasping. Just there. Available. Patient. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being stronger than they thought. For fighting when it would have been easier to run. For showing me that love isn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be celebrated. I squeezed his hand, watching our shadows lengthen across the ground where the shack had stood. We're not done yet. There are more syndicates out there. More corruption to expose. I know. He turned to face me. But we'll face them together. Together, I agreed. The Fisher Community Center would open in a year, built on the bones of the syndicate's darkest secret. But for now, we stood in the ruins of what was, planning what would be. 2 survivors who had found strength in the most unlikely place. A worthless shack that had proved to be worth everything. My husband had left me a shack. And in the end, it had given me back my life. So, tell me, if you discovered your entire life had been orchestrated by others, would you seek revenge or justice? And do you believe there's a difference? Let me know in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious what you would have done.